What's up, everybody? Corey Hughes, Bloody History. We're back. So, today we're going to continue with... let me adjust my volume here. We're going to... That's better. We are going to continue on with Marguerite Oswald's testimony before the Warren Commission. It's pretty lengthy, but I am very interested in what Marguerite Oswald has to say about life pre-59, right? That's really what I'm concerned with. So I think I've mentioned this before, but Marguerite Oswald's testimony and everything related to Oswald post-59, I've been kind of trying to put off. I don't know how successful I'm going to be, because the life of Oswald, as I see it, can be broken into three very clear and distinct eras. You've got, well, technically, you could do four. Life up to the Marines, then life in the Marines, then life in Russia, and then life post-June 62, right? So those are basically the four segments of Oswald's life, and I have been on for the last 8 months or so, I've been on Oswald up until the time he gets out of the Marine Corps. And that's the plan for that is to be my next book is going to be Oswald up until 59. So while I would like to very much put off everything post 59, we have to get through it. I mean, there's just no way around it. If we're going to get through this Marguerite Oswald testimony, a lot of it's going to be about things that happened post 59. So, but that's the plan. That's the plan. The plan is to knock out the next book on Oswald up to 59 because it's fascinating. And there's a fucking million pages of fucking documents, right? There's tons of stuff. And when you have that many documents on Oswald going back that far, what you find when you read them all is that you have huge potholes, huge gaps, things that don't make sense. You know, the whole Oswald in two different places thing, right? Which we've pretty much kind of somewhat got a grip on, right? An Office of Naval Intelligence project that predated the CIA that was handed over to the CIA and Angleton at some point. Honestly, a lot of people, like you'll notice guys like Jefferson Morley, okay? You don't really hear a lot from D. Eugenio anymore because that guy's a fucking fraud. But Jefferson Morley, I have a hard time reading that guy. I've exchanged some message DMs with him, and I can't really read the guy. He seems too resistant to find out anything new. You know, didn't really care that David Ferrie was in Dallas. Didn't care that I had pictures of Alvin Bobouf and Leighton Martin's in Dealey Plaza, right? That's how it became irrelevant to him. He spends all his time on like the CIA and Angleton and stuff. Who cares? Like, who cares that once you get to that level, who gives a fuck? We know the CIA was involved. We know that Angleton was heavily involved. We know Hoover was heavily involved, right? So what else do you fucking need? What else do you need? You looking for a smoking gun that Angleton was aware of all this stuff? You're never going to find it, right? So why waste your time on big picture stuff like that when you already know the answer? You already know that Angleton and Hoover were involved in the pre-defection Oswald stuff, right? So what else is there to know? Who cares? So, before I get started, let me just point this out. Right now, I've got about 15 copies of my book, A Warning from History, signed copies, that I'm ready to ship out. And so if you're interested in a signed book, this is, I'm going back to my previous deal. Anybody who signs up for my Substack, bloodyhistory.substack.com, anyone who signs up and pays for the full year for the $50, I will send you a signed copy of my book. But I've only got 15 or so left. So, first 15 gets it. Let me see, what else do I have going on? Audiobook's almost done. It's fully recorded. I got 4 chapters to edit and to clean up. And that'll be out on time for all the people who pre-ordered that. That will be out about a week from today, I'm assuming. And for everybody else, you'll be able to get that on May 1st. So, I'm offering a great deal if you pre-order that. If you pre-order that, you get my PDF copy of the book and you get my notes, my 600 plus page notes. If you pre-order the audio book at buymeacoffee.com/JFKbook. After May 1st, within that first week, it should be on Amazon and Audible and all that stuff. Let me tell you, reading a book that you wrote almost 2 years ago, errors and all, because the errors won't be corrected until the next edition of the book, it's a little frustrating. It really wasn't the greatest experience because you realize your understandings, they grow and they change every day, right? And so there's things in the book that I have updated my perspective on. But I can't really make any changes until the next edition, which will probably be 2026 sometime. But that's it for the preamble. Let me go ahead and get started on this. I'm going to pick up right where we left off from the last episode. All right, so about an hour later, the telephone rang and it was Mrs. Payne. She said, Mrs. Oswald, Lee called, and he was very upset because Marina was not with me, and he asked me to get a lawyer for him, a Mr. Apt. I would like to talk to Marina. So I put Marina on the telephone, and Marina said about 2 or 3 words. So when she got off the telephone, I said, now Marina talks in Russian, gentlemen. I said, Marina, Mrs. Payne told me that Lee called you, and you were not at home at Mrs. Payne, and Lee tells Mrs. Payne to get a lawyer. Marina didn't answer. I then sensed, well, now why isn't she answering me? This is very peculiar. And there was no more said about that conversation. Did you ask, Mr. Rankin then asked, did you ask her about this lawyer? Ask Marina? Yes. No, sir. There was no more said about this conversation. And Mr. Rankin asks, you didn't say anything about Mr. Abt to her then? No, sir. But here is the point to this whole thing. The FBI agent would have to know where we were, and Mrs. Payne would have to know where we were because of these 2 life representatives who I'm assuming probably went back to Mrs. Payne's home in order to get more information. And they would have told her where we were because no one knew where we were. This girl and I had no protection or anything. We were sent out there with this Mr. Alan Grant, the representative, and no one knew who we were. And Mr. Hart Odom would have to know where we were through Miss Payne, which is a normal procedure, let's say. He might have gone through Mrs. Payne's home looking for a Marina there, and Mrs. Payne might have told him we were at the Executive Inn. I will grant that. But the point I'm going to make is that the picture was tried to be shown to Marina before the telephone conversation. Now, if there are any questions why I say that, I would be happy to answer. Yes, why do you say that? Because they wanted Marina. And Mr. Dulles asks, could we get what picture this is? Is that the picture held in the hand? Yes, sir, the picture that is held in the hand that the FBI agent, Mr. Hart Odom, showed me. I understand you didn't recognize who the picture was at all. No, I told Mr. Hart Odom I'd never seen the man before. Believe me, sir. And he left. So the picture was shown, was tried, had tried to be shown to my daughter-in-law, but they were not successful. So then Marina received a phone call. Now, I'm under the impression, since I know it was Mr. Jack Ruby's picture I saw, at that time I didn't. How do you know that? Because I've seen his picture in the paper. Now I know it's Mr. Jack Ruby. I'm under the impression that Marina was threatened. What was the date now? This is Saturday, November 23rd. This is approximately 6:30 in the evening that the FBI agent came. And the telephone call was later. Now I have no way of knowing whether Lee had permission to use a telephone. Remember, Lee is in jail. About what time do you think the telephone call was? I would say about 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the night. That was still on Saturday night. Yes, sir, still on Saturday night at the Executive Inn. And that was after the picture was shown to me. She received this telephone call and became very silent. And the next day, my son was shot. Now it is now that I have done investigation of this case that I believe that the picture was meant for Marina to see. All right, let me pause right here. So Marguerite Oswald is claiming that FBI agent Odom showed her a picture of Jack Ruby on Saturday night before he shot Oswald. Okay. Why do you think that? Asked Rankin. Because now it's been proven that Jack Ruby killed my son, and I think there's a connection there. Because Marina did not tell me about her conversation. And you men hold the answer whether Lee used the telephone from the jailhouse. I don't know that. You base that on just your own conclusion that you arrive at now, don't you? Yes, because of the FBI agent, Mr. Hart Odom, insistence on taking my daughter-in-law, and he being the same agent that came and showed me the picture. And Mr. Ruby being the man that shot Lee. Yes, these are definite conclusions. This is what you base it on. Yes, sir, that is what I base it on. Do I understand correctly that Marina did not see the picture at any time? That is correct, sir, but they tried awfully hard for Marina to see the picture. And when they could not show it to her, they showed it to me, yes, sir. Have you ever seen that picture since? On a Wednesday. Lee was shot on a Sunday. Neither Marina nor I knew how he was shot. They kept it from us. You have to visualize this. We were at the Six Flags, approximately 18 to 20 FBI agents, Secret Service men running in and out, a woman with a Russian girl, and 2 sick babies, and the girl, and I do not know what is going on. Rankin then asks, when you'd gotten over to the Six Flags, you must have skipped something there. You were in the Executive Inn before. Yes, I was going to make a point about letting you know why I didn't know. All right, let's go back to the Executive Inn. So that night, I was very upset and very worried. I realized that we were alone and we were not going to go into town, into Dallas. I wasn't going to take this Russian girl and the 2 babies, and the babies were all chapped. We had no diapers. We were not prepared for this, and it was hectic, gentlemen. So all night long, I'm wondering, how can I get in touch with Robert? What can I do? And I was a little suspicious of Mrs. Payne. I was suspicious of Mrs. Payne from the time I entered her home. Had you found out how much money the life man gave you? No, not even yet. All right. So I signed for the food. I called the operator, and I asked the operator what name the room was registered under. She said, well, this is an unusual request. Don't you know what room, what name? I said, frankly, I don't. We are 3 couples. I don't know which name they used. So she told me that the room was registered under Mrs. Allen Grant, which is the name of the life representative. So I charged and signed, and they would have that for proof, Mrs. Allen Grant on the food. Why did you say 3 couples? Oh, I just said that to the operator because I had to give her a reason why I didn't know which name the room was registered under. So I just wanted to elaborate a little bit to let her know. I didn't want to give my name because I was, by this time, a little concerned about the situation. During the night, I thought, we are in a position here. I'm in a position with a Russian girl and 2 babies, and I just don't know what to do. I had no contact with Robert. Robert was trying to get an attorney, and I didn't know if Robert knew where we were. And I did not want to call Mrs. Payne. I wanted to stay clear of Mrs. Payne. So this is a very unusual coincidence. Now I've got to go back a little bit, but believe me, gentlemen, the story will get together for you to understand. About 1 month prior to this, there was an ad in a Fort Worth paper that the public library was going to have language lessons, and one was Russian classes. Well, I then, as I told you, I was employed for the 3 to 11 shift, and I was getting a day off, and this would have been a steady job because this woman was not that sick, just an invalid. So I decided on my day off I wanted to do something. So I decided I would call up about it, and on my day off, make Tuesday my day off and take up Russian in case, because I had always hoped in my heart that Marina and Lee would contact me someday. After all, I'm a mother first. So I went to the library, and Mr. Peter Gregory was the instructor. Now, you must remember, I did not know that he knew Marina and Lee. This is a public notice for the Russian language. So Mr. Peter Gregory is the instructor. I went to the second class. My car broke down just 1 block from the library, and I had to have it towed, and I went to the class. And Mr. Peter Gregory was there, and several of the women waiting for his classes to start. I said, I don't imagine I will learn anything because my car is broken down and I'm pretty upset. Mr. Gregory said, where do you live, Mrs. Oswald? Maybe I could help you and take you home. And the other couple said, we would be happy. And I said, I live in Arlington Heights, and he happened to live about 10 blocks away. Now I have to go back. The point I'm going to make is this. Mr. Peter Gregory is the engineer who knew my son Robert, who was friends with Lee and Marina. Yet when I registered for a class and the librarian had come back down before the class and read off the names of the people that were going to take the Spanish lesson, isn't it peculiar that Mr. Gregory did not remember me as the mother of Lee, didn't acknowledge me as the mother of Lee? I find that very peculiar. Even the second lesson, there was no acknowledgement. So I went home with Mr. Peter Gregory, and there was still no acknowledgement. So we were talking about the Russian language. That is very hard to learn. And I said, I'm sure I will never master it. And I think I will tell him why I want to take lessons because of my Russian daughter-in-law and my son speaks Russian. But I didn't do it. But I'm going to point out again that Mr. Gregory did not acknowledge me. I'm going to give and take. Maybe he didn't connect me, but it would seem very odd. Mrs. Marguerite Oswald was the name, that he didn't connect as Marina's mother-in-law and Lee's mother when he was such a friend with them. Mr. Rankin says, I'm not clear as to what lessons you were taking. Russian lessons at the public library in Fort Worth, Texas, and Mr. Gregory was the teacher. You said something about Spanish. Oh, did I? I'm sorry. No, sir, the Russian language. What days were these? That was said by the chairman, who I believe is Dulles. And then Mr. Rankin asks, what days were these that you talked to Mr. Gregory? You mean the Russian language? Yes. I do not have this information, but I can get it for you from the public library because there was a public notice in the paper. Can you tell us approximately? Yes, it was just right before the assassination. I had taken 2 lessons. Yes, I had taken 2 lessons, and I didn't go for a 3rd lesson because this was on a Friday, and the lessons were on a Tuesday. So I had taken 2 lessons, the 2 Tuesdays prior to the assassination. I see. So it would be a little around over 3 weeks before the assassination. Yes, sir. 2 Tuesdays before, and then my next lesson would have been the Tuesday after the Friday of the assassination. Yes, sir, that is the time. So then I thought of Mr. Gregory. Now, believe me, gentlemen, and I will swear again if you want me to, nothing was said about Mr. Gregory and Marina being friends. But I do have a guardian angel, and as I go along, some of the things I know have been from this guardian angel. This was just a coincidence. I thought of calling Mr. Peter Gregory. I have no friends in Fort Worth. I live a very lonely life. I'm not lonely, but I live to myself. I kept very busy. I had my work 24-hour duty. So really, I have no friends, and because of Lee's defection, I didn't make any new friends. So I'm racking up my mind, who can I call for help? And I think of Mr. Peter Gregory. So I call Mr. Peter Gregory at 6:30 in the morning, Sunday morning the 24th. And I didn't want the hotel operator to know who I was, so I gave a fictitious name. He said, I'm sorry, I can't tell you who I am, Mr. Gregory. I'm ahead of my story. Marina, when I said, Marina, we need help, honey, I'm going to call Mr. Gregory, and I told her about me taking Russian lessons. Oh, Mama, I know Mr. Gregory Lee. No, Mr. Gregory, the man at the library that gives Russian lessons. So I find that very much of a coincidence. So I called Mr. Gregory. I said, Mr. Gregory, I won't say who I am, but you know my son and you know my daughter-in-law, and I'm in trouble, sir. I am over here. He said, I'm sorry, but I won't talk to anybody I don't know. Mr. Rankin asks, what name did you give him? I didn't give him any name. He said, I'm sorry, but I won't talk to anyone I don't know. And I said, well, you know my son real well. Oh, you're Mrs. Oswald. I said, yes, this is Mrs. Oswald. We're at the Executive Inn in Dallas, stranded. And do you know of anyone who would give my daughter-in-law and I a home and put us up for the time that this is going on so we can be near Lee at the courthouse? I need help, Mr. Gregory. He said, Mrs. Oswald, what's your room number? I will help you. Hold still. Help will be coming. And so that was the end of my conversation with Mr. Gregory. At 11:30, Sunday, November 23rd. Oh, she's giving a bad date here. At 11:30 Sunday, November 23rd, my son Robert and Mr. Gregory came to the Executive Inn, all excited. We had diapers strung all over the place. My uniform was washed. I had no clothes with me. I went with the uniform. Hurry up, we have to get you out of here. I'm not the one to be told what to do, and you gentlemen know that by this time. I said, what's your hurry? We have diapers and all. I want to tell you what happened. Mother, stop talking. We have to get you out of here. Mr. Gregory said, Mrs. Oswald, will you listen and get things together? We have to get you out of here. I said, this is all we have been doing since yesterday, running from one place to the other. Just give us a minute. We're coming, but we have to pack things. Hurry up. I said, I want you to know how we got here. I was shown a picture of a man last night, and Mrs. Payne called and said that Lee called. I told him exactly. So Mr. Gregory and Robert knew about the things I told you. I told him that while I'm gathering up things. Mrs. Oswald, we will talk later. We have to get you out of here. I have found out since that my son was shot, but they did not tell us. Did you have a television in this room? Yes, sir. Now, here's another godsend. We watched the television, Marina and I. She watched more than I did. We were very busy, Mr. Rankin. These babies had diarrhea and everything. I was very busy with the babies and the Russian girl. And just like at the end of the Six Flags, we were just getting snatched out of it. But Marina wanted to know, Mama, I want to see Lee. She was hoping Lee would come on the picture like he did. So this morning, Sunday morning, I said, oh, honey, let's turn the television off. The same thing over and over. And I turned the television off. So Marina and I did not see what happened to my son. We had the television off, so we did not know. But frantically, Robert and Mr. Gregory kept insisting that we pack and run. So when we get downstairs, here was Secret Service men all over. Mr. Rankin then asks, now before you leave that, what did Robert say about the story about the picture when you told him that? Did he say anything? No. He and Mr. Gregory both didn't want to listen to me. I told them, but they didn't want to hear my story. They wanted us to get out of there. They didn't say anything about it. No, sir, not that I can recall. And I don't believe they did. They didn't want to hear what I had to say. They kept fussing at me and saying, Mother, stop talking. Hurry up, we've got to get you out of here. I kept saying, all we've been doing is run from one place to another. The diapers are wet. I was kind of having my way about this. So when we get downstairs, there's Secret Service all around. I'm ahead of my story. Robert went downstairs to pay the bill, and this is what I gave Robert the money. And it was a $50 bill that the life representative had given me. They gave me some money. I took it out. That is the first time you looked at it. The first time I looked at it, sir, I charged the food and I had no need for money. Wait a minute. I'm wrong. Yes. Representative Ford then asks, Mrs. Oswald, didn't you say you had washed your uniform? Yes. When you washed your uniform, didn't you? Just a minute, if you let me explain. I just said I was wrong the first time. It was a Puerto Rican that brought the dinner in. We needed lotion for the baby. And then I took the bill out and saw it was a $50 bill because he went to the drugstore. I gave him the 50, this Puerto Rican that brought the food in, the first food we had to go to the drugstore and pay for the necessities that Marina and I needed. Really, it was for the baby, the lotion and everything. And he came back and the drugstore was closed. It was on a Sunday. And so I didn't know about the $50 bill before this time. And then Robert came and I gave Robert the $50 bill and he went downstairs to pay the bill. Now, the representatives had not paid the bill. Robert used the 50 to pay the bill. The bill was not paid. So we were really stranded. Those men left two women stranded. Now, let me see if there's anything I've forgotten. Mr. Rankin then asks, where did you put the $50 bill after the Puerto Rican brought it back? In my uniform pocket, because that was all the clothes I had. I kept it in my pocket. When you washed your uniform? I naturally took it out of my pocket to wash my uniform because I stated I gave Robert the $50 bill to pay the hotel. But that was all the clothes I had. You have to visualize that, oh, this is really rush business. We are doing this all in a hurry. So I didn't even put it in my pocketbook, and I would not be the type to put it in my pocketbook because it's a $50 bill and all the money I have to get out of the hotel. I don't know if I'm going to get help, so I want to keep it on my person, just like I keep important papers right now on my person. I took it out of my pocket to wash the uniform, I know. This can be proven by the bellhop who brought the food, and he went to the drugstore, and the drugstore was closed on a Sunday. And we did not get the lotion, and I gave him the $50 bill to buy things with. And then after that, you paid the bill there. Robert paid the bill. What happened next? Nothing was said about the bill. I don't know then that the representatives had not paid the bill. Robert took the $50 and checked us out. Then the Secret Service. Could we have the time when you checked out? Yes, approximately 11:30 to 12 o'clock on Sunday. Can you tell us the amount of the bill? Yes. Since then, I have called Robert, and Robert said that the amount of the bill was some $40-odd, about 48. I believe that's what Robert told me. I have no way of knowing other than what Robert told me. And I would think so. If I remember correctly, the rooms were $17.50. I told you before that they put us in exclusive suites in two. The rooms were $17.50, and we had some meals, so that would make it about 40 some odd dollars. And then Robert checked you out. After that, what happened? Then Robert got in a car with Secret Service, and then Marina and I and Mr. Gregory were in another car with two Secret Service agents in the front. And did you go someplace? Here comes me again. They wanted to take us as soon as we got in the car. Mr. Gregory says, we're taking you to Robert's mother-in-law's house. Now, they live out of Boyd, Texas in the country. Now, this is Vada's mother, right? Boyd, Texas is a little bit out of country town, but they live in a little farmhouse. They are dairy people, Robert's in-laws, and they wanted to take us there, which would have been approximately 45 minutes from Dallas. I said, no, you're not taking me out to the sticks in the country. I want to be in Dallas where I can help Lee. Well, for security reasons, this is the best place. Nobody would ever find it. And I said, security reasons? You can give me security for me, and you can get security for me in a hotel room in town. I'm not going to go out to this little country town. I want to be in Dallas where I can help Lee. And so I'm not being well liked because all the arrangements was made that we were going to go to this little farmhouse, but I would not go. I could not survive if I was 40 or 50 miles away and my son was picked up as a murderer. I had to be right there in Dallas. Now, this was after, when they left the executive inn, when we got in the car, and this was after your son was killed? Well, yes, but they didn't know this, and Robert didn't know that. They kept it from us, I guess, being women. Marina and I did not even know he was shot, and I will go on to tell that story. No, sir, we did not know. The Secret Service people didn't tell you either. No, sir, nothing was said. They wanted us for security reasons. If the time is 11:30, they left at 12 or 12:30, I thought. And Alan Dulles says, you said 11:30 to 12. Approximate time. Dulles then says, it might not have taken place. And then Mrs. Oswald says, I know Lee was shot, but at this time I'm telling you, I don't know this. This has to go in sequence, sir. Lee was shot or else he wouldn't have had all these Secret Service men around. But I know then, after Lee was shot, not now, I do not know this. Are there any questions? I'm willing to answer anything you want. If you'll bear with me, I can go into. And then Rankin says, did you later learn at what time of the Sunday he was shot? No, sir, I did not. You never did. Not until about 3 days later. That's what I was telling you about Six Flags. I'm trying to explain to you why I don't know these things is because we did not sit down and watch television and read papers, Marina and I. I had 2 sick babies there. There was a doctor coming in twice a day. I was a very busy woman, and the men were not telling us anything. They were not interested in us. Now, after you told them that you wanted to stay in a hotel, you could be protected there, what happened? Then nothing, of course. Nothing was said that they were going to give me my way. But we needed clothes. Marina and the baby needed clothes. So then they decided that they should go to Irving through my suggestion and so on and pick up clothes for Marina and the baby because we were short on diapers. So they are going to Irving. We got to Irving. There is police cars all around. So that is why I feel sure my son was shot. How far away is it from the executive inn? I would think now this is just merely hearsay, but I would think about 12 to 15 or 18 miles. When we reached there, they brought us to the chief of police's home, and there were cars all around. As soon as the car stopped, the Secret Service agent said, Lee has been shot. And I said, how badly? He said, in the shoulder. They brought Marina into the house. Did you ask him how he knew that? It came over, I thought he had the radio in his car, Secret Service man, and he talked to someone. This was all set up, sir. This I can prove to you. They didn't want us to know. They're now telling us this, Marina and I. He talked and then he turned around and he said, Lee has been shot. And I said, how badly? And he said, in the shoulder. I cried and said, Marina, Lee's been shot. So Marina went into the chief of police's at Irving's home to call Mrs. Payne to get the diapers and things ready. They decided and told us with me in the car and Marina that it would not be a good thing for us to go to Mrs. Payne's home and to get these things. That Marina should go in the chief of police's home and call and tell Mrs. Payne what she wanted. And 1 or 2 of the agents would go and get the things for Marina. So I'm sitting in the car with the agent. Marina is in the home now, remember. So something comes over the mic and the Secret Service agent says, do not repeat, do not repeat. I said, my son is gone, isn't he? And he didn't answer. I said, answer me. I want to know if my son is gone. I want to meditate. He said, yes, Mrs. Oswald, your son has just expired. Now, which agent told you this? This is the agent that was also now sent to protect me in Fort Worth, Mr. Mike Howard, who was the agent that rode in the car with President Johnson and who was the agent that was at Six Flags that was in charge. Who was the agent that was assigned to protect Bain Johnson at the dormitory? He's also the same agent that was sent to protect me in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, who was the other agent that was with you that day? Was there another Secret Service agent with you? He went into the home. He escorted Marina into the chief of police's home, and I do not know his name. And he's not the other agent that I want to know the name of. Wait just a minute. I don't know this man's name, but he's not the other agent that is involved. How about that time on Sunday? Did you learn of your son's death? How did you learn of your son's death? Well, now, here is your time element. I said Robert and Mr. Gregory and the Secret Service were there approximately from 11:30, and I knew nothing about the shooting. And then we had to go to Irving and everything. They then told us Lee was shot. So now we're bringing up the time. It all fits in, which is 1 or 1:30. As a matter of fact, then when I had got the news, I went into the home and I said, Marina, our boy is gone. We both cried. And then they were all watching the sequence on television. The television was turned to the back where Marina and I could not see it. They sat us on a sofa and his wife gave us coffee. And the back of the television was to us. And the men and a lot of the men were looking at the television. It probably just happened because the man said, do not repeat. And I insisted. They gave us coffee. And then it later came out in the paper that a story about the chief of police, how it was set up for the women that we should not know. We were to go to his house. There was a story about that from this chief of police in Irving. What paper is that? The Star-Telegram paper. All of my papers were taken out of my home by Secret Service men. While at Six Flags, they saved the papers for me. We would not let the maids take the papers. And I brought all of those papers from the Six Flags from the very beginning to my home in Fort Worth, Texas. And every piece of paper out of my home was taken. So I did not, believe me, gentlemen, this seems strange, but it was 2 weeks later before I saw the picture of the way my son was shot. Mr. Blair, Justice of the Star-Telegram, gave me back issues of the paper, and it wasn't until then I actually knew the tragedy of how my son was shot, because they took all the papers, all my clippings and everything. I was left stranded without any papers, and until Mr. Blair, Justice, brought me these back issues some 2 weeks later, was the first time I saw exactly the tragedy that my son was shot. Was there any discussion between you and Marina about this? About the shooting? Yes. No, we didn't know. I was with Marina at the Executive Inn from the 22nd until the shooting the 24th, as I told you. Okay, so hold on a second. I'm confused here. So when the fuck did they go to that Six Flags? Because earlier, when she was at the Executive Inn, she was like, "Oh, I'm getting pulled out of here. They want me to move around just like at Six Flags." And then we left, and so according to her, they're at Inn of the Six Flags from the 24th to the 28th. But that's not how she was indicating it a minute ago. So I'm a little confused as to what's going on here. I sense she's partially full of shit. All right, here we go. Then we left, and from the 24th to the 28th at the Inn of the Six Flags, the agents and my son kept this from us. We did not know. We knew Lee was shot and dead, but we did not know how. We didn't get to read a paper or watch television. We just had snatches of the television. Well, when you both learned that he was shot on that Sunday afternoon, did you and Marina say anything to each other? Oh, yes. That's another story. Immediately, I said, I want to see Lee. And Marina said, I want to see Lee too. And the chief of police and Mr. Gregory said, well, it would be better to wait until he was at the funeral home and fixed up. I said, no, I want to see Lee now. Marina said, me too. Me want to see Lee. They led us to believe that now they have taught her to do like this. But Marina has always spoken like that. I've acted as an interpreter for her, as I stated before, for an FBI agent, and she understood me, and he was satisfied that he didn't need an interpreter. So she said, I want to see Lee too. They didn't want us to see Lee from the ugliness of it, evidently, but I insisted, and so did Marina. So they could not do anything with it with the two women. They decided to pacify us. We got in the car. On the way in the car, they are trying to get us to change our minds, and he said, Mr. Mike Howard, he was driving the car. Mrs. Oswald, for security reasons, it would be better if you would wait until later to see Lee, because this is a big thing. I said, for security reasons, I want you to know I'm an American citizen, and even though I'm poor, I have as much right as any other human being. And Mrs. Kennedy was escorted to the hospital to see her husband, and I insisted upon being escorted, and not enough security to take me to the hospital to see my son. Gentlemen, I require the same privilege. So Mr. Mike Howard said, all right, we'll take you to the hospital. I want you to know when we get there, we will not be able to protect you. Our security measures end right there. The police will then have you under protection. We cannot protect you. I said, that's fine. If I'm going to die, I will die that way, but I'm going to see my son. Mr. Gregory says, and in the most awful tone of voice, I will always remember this. Remember, gentlemen, my son has been accused. I have just lost a son. He said, Mrs. Oswald, you're being so selfish. You're endangering this girl's life and the life of these two children. I want to elaborate on this. He's not thinking about me. He's thinking about the Russian girl. I'm going to bring this over and over, that these Russian people are always considering this Russian girl. He snapped at me. I said, Mr. Gregory, I'm not talking for my daughter-in-law. She can do what she wants. I'm saying I want to see my son. And so they brought us to the hospital. And Marina said, I too want to see Lee. After Mr. Gregory said that, I too want to see Lee. So then they did give us leave at the entrance of the hospital, the Secret Service men, and then the police took over. We were escorted by the police in the hospital. What time was that? I wouldn't think it would be more than between 2 and 3 o'clock. This is Sunday afternoon. Sunday, November 24th. And then what happened? Then Mr. Perry, the doctor, came down. We were escorted into a room, and he came in. He said, now you know the Texas law is that we have an autopsy on the body. I said, yes, I understand. And Marina understood. Marina is a registered pharmacist. So Marina understands these things, and Marina understood. And he said, now I will do whatever you ladies wish. I understand you wish to see the body. However, I will say this. It will not be pleasant. All the blood is drained from him. It would be much better if you would see him after he was fixed up. I'm a nurse. I've seen death before. I want to see my son now. Still, I'm reminding everybody, we don't have a goddamn clue when Marguerite Oswald went to nursing school. There's no period of time in her life at all that would have been available for her to go to nursing school at all. Period. Okay? We were escorted upstairs into a room. They said it was a morgue, but it wasn't. Lee's body was on a hospital bed, I would say, or a table like you take into an operating room. And there were a lot of policemen standing around guarding the body. And of course, his face was showing, and Marina went first. She opened his eyelids. Now, to me, I'm a nurse, and I don't think I could have done that. This is a very, very strong girl that she can open a dead man's eyelids. And she says, he cry, he eye wet, to the doctor. And the doctor said, yes. Well, I know that the fluid leaves and you do have moisture, so I didn't even touch Lee. I just wanted to see that it was my son. So on the way, leaving the body in the room, I'm in the room. You were satisfied it was your son? Yes, sir. That's why I wanted to see the body. I wanted to make sure it was my son. So while leaving the room, I said to the police, I think someday you will hang your heads in shame. I said, I happen to know some facts that maybe this is the unsung hero of this episode. And I, as his mother, intend to provide this if I can. And with that, I left the room. Then we were escorted into a room downstairs and introduced to the chaplain. I've asked several reporters to give me the chaplain's name because I wanted to have all this information for you. But you have to realize, I just knew Thursday, and I have 3 times as many papers as I have here. So it's been a chore for me to do all of this, but that it's easy to find out the name of the chaplain at Parkland Hospital. So I asked to speak to the chaplain in private. So I spoke to the chaplain in private, and I told him I thought my son was an agent and that I wanted him to talk to Robert. Robert does not listen to me, never has, and I have had very little conversation with Robert ever since Robert has joined the Marines because of the way our life has intervened. That's an interesting point she's making right here, because remember, at some point in time, Robert Oswald will help Lee and Marguerite Oswald move from New Orleans to Fort Worth around, when was it? The Collinwood address was what, July 55? Or was it 56? No, it had to have been 56 because they were at 126 Exchange Place up until July of 56. So Robert lived with Lee, and this Marguerite, once they got to the Collinwood address, 4936 Collinwood, which is problematic. That whole address is problematic, but we're not going to talk about that. But so it would appear that Robert was in their lives for the couple years leading up to that. And then Robert goes off and he ends up marrying Vada before he joins the Marines. Really weird how he got with her so quickly and got married. Because remember, he was trying to get with that Clubfoot girl that we don't know anything about. Right? All right. So Mr. Rankin asks, did you tell the chaplain why you thought your son was an agent? No, sir, but this is what I told the chaplain. No, I'm always thinking of my country, the security of my country, before I would say anything like that. And I told you why I told the FBI men, because of the money involved, and I didn't know how the public would take this because they helped a Marxist. So I didn't tell him. But I did say I wanted him to talk to Robert because we were financially in very poor straits. Then I wanted my son buried in the Arlington Cemetery. Now, gentlemen, I didn't know that President Kennedy was going to be buried in Arlington Cemetery. All I know is that my son is an agent and that he deserves to be buried in Arlington Cemetery. So I talked to the chaplain about this. I went into quite detail about this. I asked him if he would talk to Robert, because when I talked to Robert about it, as soon as I started to say something, he would say, "Oh, mother, forget it." So I asked the chaplain to talk to Robert about Lee being buried in the Arlington Cemetery. Just so you know, the man who shot President Kennedy, Jack Valenti, is buried in Arlington Cemetery. Did he report to you about it? No, sir, but he did call Robert in. We were getting ready. The police were getting ready to escort us out of his office, and he said, "If you don't mind, I would like to talk to Robert Oswald just a minute." So he brought Robert into the room that he had taken me and stayed in there a little while with Robert. So I feel sure that the chaplain relayed my message to him because we were getting ready to leave, and he asked the police if he could talk to Robert. The chaplain never told you anything more about it? No, sir. I have not seen the chaplain since. Did Robert say anything about it? No, sir. Robert says nothing. I've tried to contact Robert for important matters, and Robert will not talk to me. That's because you're not his mother, you fucking cunt. Lee was left-handed. No, he wasn't. Lee wrote left-handed and ate right-handed, and I wanted to know if Lee shot left-handed. Because on Lee's leaves, as I stated, they live out in the country, and Robert goes squirrel hunting and all kinds of hunting. And on leave from the Marines, Lee has gone out to this farmhouse, to Robert's family house, and he and his brother have gone squirrel hunting. And so Robert would know if Lee shot left-handed, and he would not give me the information, gentlemen. Is Robert left-handed? Yes, Robert's left-handed. I'm left-handed. Is John Pick left-handed? No, John is not. But you are. Yes, sir. Now, I write left-handed, but I do everything else with my right hand. But Lee was more left-handed than I am. I write left-handed, but I do everything else with my right hand. But Lee was left-handed. Okay, so let me just point this out. The photograph of the real Lee Oswald at Beauregard in 1954, fall semester 54. Lee is photographed holding a pencil in his right hand. Okay? The fucking kid was right-handed. He was not left-handed. So this is problematic for numerous reasons. Was Lee's father left-handed? That I do not remember, Mr. Rankin. No, I am the left-handed one. I would say no. See, she doesn't even know anything about Robert Oswald because she wasn't fucking married to him. No, I'm the left-handed one. I would say no. Now, there is another story, and we have stories galore, believe me, with documents and everything. A gun will be involved in this story that Lee had bought, but I don't want to confuse the committee. That is another part that we will have to go into, but I will have to lead up to. The only way I can do this and not forget things is to do it the way I'm doing it. And if you have any questions, if you feel the story I have told so far, I would like to know myself if I have forgotten anything. It is awfully hard for me to remember everything. If you want to question me, I'm more than happy if I know the facts to give them to you. Well, you go ahead and tell us in your own way. May I have some fresh water, please? You've never told us about the Walker matter. Did you know something about that? No, I didn't know about that. The chairman then asks, "You're going to let her finish this other, are you not?" Mr. Rankin says, "Yes. I didn't know about that until it came out in the paper, but I have a story on that." You want to finish this incident about the gun you're talking about? About Robert knowing about the gun, I've already said that. About Lee being left-handed and he and Robert going squirrel hunting. You said there was another gun in the matter. That's a long story, sir. I think she has gotten to the point. I got to the point. I finished this story. Really, don't you think about the gun? I don't know. I think Robert knowing Lee was left-handed. Has anything happened since that you care to call our attention? Things that you know about? On the particular story I have said this morning, you mean of Lee? This is where it gets confusing. Okay, so let me pause really quickly right here. So what do we have here? We have multiple things going on. She's talking about a story with a gun, right? We're assuming the photographs that Robert took of Lee on Vada's family farm, the ones who clearly not the man who was arrested on November 22nd, right? She's talking about that incident with the gun. She's talking about Lee being left-handed, which we know he was not left-handed. And what else do we have here? We have another story about a gun that they're seemingly trying to veer away from. So let's just see what's going on here. This is where it gets confusing. Representative Ford says, "Where did you go after Parkland Hospital? What happened then?" So he's just completely changing the fucking story. Oh, yes, this is interesting. After the Parkland Hospital, when this Mike Howard said, "Well, what we will do, we have a place, and this is where we will take them." And they took us to the Inn of the Six Flags, which is on the outskirts of Arlington, Texas. They took us there. And I'm assuming that it is a Secret Service hideout or something, because they had made no arrangements or anything. We were just welcomed right at the inn, and they knew where to go. What happened there? Well, now, Mr. Rankin, that is so important. If we're going to recess, I'm going to ask not to start that story, because that's a very long, important story to this commission. How far is that from Dallas, from the Six Flags Inn? Well, it is in between Dallas and Fort Worth. It is near Arlington, Texas. And then the chairman says, "We'll recess until 2 o'clock. Whereupon at 12:55 p.m., the president's commission recessed. So we'll pick it up here in the afternoon session tomorrow. Testimony of Marguerite Oswald. So some very interesting things. You can tell that she's starting to say things that they then cut off. She starts to talk about 2 gun incidents, one of them being the incident at the Vada's family farm, right? And so, yeah, you can tell she's starting to say things, and they're like, "Oh, we better change the subject here." So, but she's giving us a pretty decent timeline of what she did, even though she's kind of conflicted in when she was staying where. It appears as though they first went to the executive inn, get pulled out of that, and then they get to this Inn of the Six Flags. So, yeah, rather confusing, and she talks about Lee being left-handed, which we can say for sure he was not. But that's going to do it for today, guys. I will be back tomorrow with more. Thank you.